Imagine a secret experiment from World War II that not only made a ship disappear, but also opened a rift in time and space, transforming its crew in terrifying ways. Now, decades later, a determined scientist uncovers the chilling truth about the Philadelphia experiment, and the government will do anything to keep it hidden. As she digs deeper, she realizes she's not just fighting for knowledge, but for her life. Who can she trust? And what is the real price of uncovering the truth? Join Dr. Evelyn Richards as she unravels a mystery far darker than anyone could have imagined, where history's darkest secrets threaten the very fabric of reality itself. Will she survive the truth, or become another victim of the cover-up? Don't miss the gripping journey through government conspiracies, time-bending experiments, and a fight for survival. Stay tuned. The truth is waiting to be discovered, if they don't find her first. Dr. Evelyn Richards sat in her small, cluttered office at the University of Pennsylvania, her eyes fixed on a dusty folder in front of her. The folder, marked with a red top secret stamp, had been buried in a box of old, declassified World War II documents she had received from a mysterious source. She had no idea how the box had found its way to her desk, but after months of research into military experiments during the war, this file seemed too significant to ignore. The file contained handwritten notes, sketches, and photographs, most of them detailing a bizarre and seemingly impossible event, the Philadelphia experiment. The experiment, as the papers described, involved a secret U.S. Navy project in 1943, designed to render a naval ship, the USS Eldridge, invisible to radar. But the notes hinted at something far darker, something not discussed in public records: teleportation, and a terrifying outcome that could never be explained. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages, uncovering a report from a naval officer who had witnessed the event firsthand. The officer described how the ship not only vanished from the Philadelphia Navy Yard, but reappeared miles away in Norfolk, Virginia. Yet, when it reappeared, something went horribly wrong. Crew members, some alive, others dead, were found fused to the ship's metal, their bodies grotesquely twisted and merged with the steel. The government had denied the existence of the experiment for years, labeling it as a conspiracy theory. But the evidence Evelyn had uncovered told a different story. This wasn't just a myth. The Philadelphia experiment had been real, and its repercussions were far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her trance. It was a message from an unknown number. "You're not the only one looking into this. Watch your back." Evelyn's heart raced. Who could know about her investigation? She closed the file and locked it in her desk drawer, but a sense of unease lingered. There was something much larger at play here, something that the government still wanted buried. And now, she was in too deep. Evelyn barely slept that night. Her mind raced with the implications of what she had discovered. The government's effort to cover up the Philadelphia experiment was far more extensive than she could have imagined. But why? What had happened to the Eldridge and its crew? And why was there still such a fear of revealing the truth? The following day, Evelyn met with her trusted colleague, Dr. Marcus Lee, a historian with a focus on military secrets. She handed him the file, watching as his face went pale as he skimmed through the contents. This is more than I expected," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "Evelyn, this isn't just a classified document. This is a Pandora's box." Evelyn nodded, her stomach twisting with a mix of excitement and dread. The documents suggest the experiment was far more than just radar invisibility. They were playing with time, space, and human lives, and something went horribly wrong. Marcus closed the file carefully. "You know the risks, right? If they find out you're looking into this, there's no telling what could happen." Evelyn leaned forward. "The government has been covering this up for decades, but now they're going to extreme lengths to bury the truth. We can't let them. We have to know what really happened to the USS Eldridge." Marcus hesitated. "Are you sure you're ready for this? If they find out, it could get ugly." Evelyn's determination was unwavering. "I have to know. And if there's any chance to stop it from happening again, I need to find out what they're hiding. We can't let history repeat itself." As Marcus left, Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. The deeper she delved into this mystery, the more it seemed like someone, or something, was watching her. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. Another cryptic message. "You don't know what you're messing with. Drop it now, or else." Evelyn's heart pounded. This was no longer just an academic inquiry. She was up against forces far more powerful than she had anticipated, and there was no turning back now. Evelyn had spent the next few days obsessively researching the Philadelphia experiment. She scoured old naval records, interviewed surviving veterans, and sifted through classified documents, but everything seemed to point back to one thing: the government's deep-seated desire to bury the truth. One evening, as Evelyn sat in her apartment, sifting through a mountain of papers, there was a knock at the door. She froze. She hadn't invited anyone over, and she hadn't told anyone where she lived. Cautiously, she peered through the peephole. A man in his late 30s stood outside, wearing a dark trench coat and a fedora. His face was partially obscured by shadows, but something about him felt familiar. Hesitantly, Evelyn opened the door. "I'm Agent Simon Harris," the man said, his voice low and calm. "I think we need to talk." Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. "Who sent you?" Harris looked around cautiously before stepping inside. "I'm not here to harm you, Dr. Richards. In fact, I'm here to help." Evelyn's mind raced. "Help? Help with what?" "The Philadelphia experiment. You're getting too close to something the government is desperate to keep hidden. But you don't know everything. You need to understand what's at stake." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "You're with the government?" "Not anymore," Harris replied, his voice grim. "I was part of a covert operation years ago. We were tasked with monitoring the aftermath of the Philadelphia experiment. But I left when I realized how deep the corruption went." Evelyn didn't know whether to trust him, but something in his eyes told her he was telling the truth. "What do you know about the experiment?" she asked. Harris sighed. "More than I ever wanted to. The truth is far worse than anything you've read, and the people who are trying to cover it up won't stop until they silence everyone involved." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. "Who are these people? What do they want?" Harris looked her in the eye. "Power, control, and they'll do anything to keep the secrets of the Philadelphia experiment hidden." Evelyn's mind raced. She had no idea who she could trust anymore, but one thing was clear. The government wasn't the only force trying to cover up the truth. She was now part of something much bigger and far more dangerous than she ever imagined. Evelyn's trust in Agent Harris grew over the following days as he provided more details about the hidden layers of the Philadelphia experiment. Harris had been part of an underground team that had been monitoring the ongoing effects of the experiment on both the USS Eldridge and the people involved. The experiment was never just about making a ship invisible, Harris explained one evening. It was about manipulating space and time itself. The Eldridge wasn't just moved across the ocean. It was pulled through dimensions, and it opened a rift in the fabric of reality. Evelyn's mind struggled to comprehend what she was hearing. "You're saying the ship wasn't just teleported? It was shifted?" "Exactly. The crew didn't just disappear and reappear, they were altered. Some were merged with the ship itself. Others were lost in the rift, trapped in a state between dimensions." Evelyn's stomach churned. She had heard of supernatural occurrences in the wake of scientific experiments, but this sounded like science fiction. Harris continued. "After the experiment, the government realized the full scope of the disaster. They had to cover it up, and anyone who spoke out vanished." "So what happened to the crew?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Some survived, but they're not the same. The ones who returned were damaged, mentally, physically. Some never spoke again. Those who had been merged with the ship's hull were found, dead or alive, in grotesque states. No one knew what to do with them." Evelyn felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The truth was far darker than she had imagined, and the more she learned, the more she realized that the consequences of the Philadelphia experiment could still be playing out today. The phone rang, breaking her train of thought. It was Marcus. "Evelyn, I think someone's been following me. I don't know how much longer I can stay safe." Evelyn's pulse quickened. This was no longer just a matter of academic inquiry. She and everyone she knew were in grave danger. Evelyn's mind raced as she hung up the phone. Marcus was in trouble. The threats against him, against all of them, were growing stronger. The government had noticed her investigation, and they wouldn't stop until they silenced everyone who knew the truth. "Evelyn, you need to get out of here," Harris urged, his face grim. "They know you're looking into this, and they're coming for you. But I can't stop now," Evelyn insisted. The truth is going to get you killed," Harris interrupted. "You need to lay low, go somewhere they won't find you. You can't keep digging into this. It's bigger than you think." But Evelyn couldn't let it go. The more she thought about the Eldridge and the horrors its crew had experienced, the more determined she became. The government was hiding something far worse than just a failed experiment. It was clear now. The experiment had created a rift in reality itself, and that rift was far from closed. "Where's Marcus?" Harris asked, cutting through her thoughts. "I don't know," Evelyn answered, her voice shaking. "But I need to find him." Harris stared at her, torn between helping her and protecting her from the storm she had unleashed. Finally, he sighed. "All right, we'll find Marcus, but we need to move quickly. The longer you stay here, the more dangerous it becomes." Evelyn nodded. She knew the risks, but there was no turning back now. The truth was out there, and no one could stop her from uncovering it. Evelyn packed quickly, throwing clothes and her laptop into a bag. She couldn't afford to waste time. Marcus was in danger, and the walls were closing in on her. Harris stood near the door, watching her intently, his eyes scanning the room as though expecting someone to burst in at any moment. "We need to move fast," Harris said, his voice urgent. "I'll get us a safe place, but first we need to check on Marcus. He could be anywhere by now." Evelyn nodded, grabbing the last of her documents and tucking them carefully into the bag. The gravity of the situation weighed on her, but she couldn't afford to let fear take over. Marcus was the only person who truly understood the depth of the Philadelphia experiment. She couldn't lose him too. Harris led the way as they left the apartment. Evelyn kept her head down, staying close to him as they walked to his car parked a few blocks away. The city seemed quieter than usual, but Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every shadow, every car that passed, felt like a threat. The air was thick with tension. As they drove through the dark streets of Philadelphia, Harris remained unusually quiet. His grip on the steering wheel was tight, and his eyes darted constantly to the rearview mirror. Evelyn could tell that he was trying to shake off the paranoia, but it was clear he was just as nervous as she was. "Do you think they know we're looking for Marcus?" Evelyn asked, her voice low. Harris nodded, glancing at her for a brief moment. "They've been tracking you ever since you started digging. Whoever they are, they have resources. Resources I don't fully understand. It's not just the government, it's something much bigger." The words sent a chill down Evelyn's spine. Something bigger? What could be more dangerous than a government cover-up? As they reached Marcus's apartment building, Evelyn's stomach twisted in anticipation. She had to know if he was okay. Harris parked the car a few blocks away, and they walked the rest of the way in silence. They reached Marcus's building without incident, but as they approached the entrance, Evelyn's heart sank. The door to Marcus's apartment was wide open, the hallway inside dark and eerily quiet. "This isn't good," Harris muttered. "We need to be careful." Evelyn's pulse quickened as they cautiously entered the building. The place felt abandoned, almost as if it had been emptied in a hurry. As they made their way up the stairs to Marcus's floor, Evelyn felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "Marcus?" she called softly as they reached his apartment door. "Marcus, it's me. Are you there?" There was no answer. Harris carefully turned the doorknob, and the door creaked open. Inside, the apartment was a mess. Papers were scattered across the floor, furniture overturned, and the window was wide open. It looked as if someone had ransacked the place. Evelyn stepped inside, her heart racing. "Marcus?" she called again, this time with more urgency. A soft sound came from the kitchen. Evelyn and Harris both froze, their eyes locking in a moment of shared tension. Harris motioned for Evelyn to stay back, then slowly crept toward the kitchen. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she followed behind, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger. Then she saw him. Marcus was crouched behind the counter, a grim look on his face. His eyes were wide with fear, and he looked as though he hadn't slept in days. "Marcus," Evelyn whispered, rushing to his side. "Evelyn, you need to get out of here," Marcus said urgently, grabbing her arm. "It's too late. They've already come for me. They know you're here, and they're not going to stop until they have you too." Evelyn felt a wave of cold dread wash over her. "What happened? Who are they?" Marcus swallowed hard, his eyes darting around the room as if expecting someone to burst through the door at any moment. "They're not just the government. They've been watching us for years, ever since we started investigating the Eldridge, and they'll do anything to keep us from exposing what really happened." Harris stepped forward, his voice low but steady. "Who are they, Marcus? What do they want?" Marcus hesitated, then looked up at them both. "It's not just about the Philadelphia experiment anymore. The experiment opened something they've been using ever since to manipulate time, space, and even The human mind. The ones behind all of this, they've been harnessing the rift's power for their own purposes. Evelyn's mind raced. The rift, the experiment, it was all tied together. And whatever had been unleashed was still out there, lurking in the shadows. "We have to stop them," Evelyn said, determination in her voice. "We can't let them continue." Marcus shook his head, his face pale. "It's too late for that. They're already here." Before Evelyn could react, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Harris immediately grabbed Marcus and pulled him back into the shadows of the kitchen, his hand on his gun. Evelyn's heart pounded as she crouched down next to them, her breath shallow. The door to the apartment slammed open, and a man stepped inside. He was tall, dressed in dark clothes, his face hidden behind a black mask. He moved with calculated precision, scanning the room as if he knew exactly where they were. Evelyn's pulse hammered in her ears as she realized they were trapped. The man stepped forward, his eyes scanning the mess of papers and the overturned furniture. Then he spoke, his voice cold and mechanical. "You can't hide from us. We know what you're after." Evelyn's stomach twisted. The man was here for the same thing she was, the truth. But at what cost? Harris's grip tightened on his gun, and Evelyn knew they didn't have much time. They had to make a choice, fight or run. And as the masked figure's eyes locked on theirs, Evelyn knew the true battle for the truth was about to begin. Evelyn, Marcus, and Harris disappeared into the night, knowing the fight for the truth had only just begun. They would expose the Philadelphia experiment, no matter the cost. But with shadows closing in and powerful enemies watching, survival became as uncertain as the terrifying reality they were uncovering.